Hi everyone, Robin here. Thanks for joining me. Today I'm showcasing a couple of new dies from Poppystamps spring release. I made a nice spring wreath using the stitched wreath from Poppystamps, and I turned it into a get well card. But this wreath you could use for many occasions. Here are the products I used. As I mentioned, the stitched wreath, the blooming border I used for the flowers on the wreath, and my sentiment is from the Peony Stems and Blossoms set. Has some great sentiments in there. I'm starting with a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 Nina white cardstock. I am using the 110 weight. I attached my wreath to the cardstock using Scotch repositionable tape. It's the tape I usually reach for because it doesn't leave a sticky residue on my cardstock. And I know there are a lot of people who use other products, but this one just happens to work for me. Just running my wreath through my die cut machine, usual sandwich, and it comes out of the die beautifully, even with all those little pieces. But what I really like about this die is the stitching around the inside of the wreath. To make my flowers, I'm using the blooming border die cut. As you can see, all the little pieces are attached onto one easy to use die. To achieve some texture in my flowers, I'm using my typical piece of fun foam, then my cardstock, and then I place my die on top. Ran it through my die cut machine as usual. The fun foam doesn't add much thickness at all, so there's no problem going through your machine. And the flowers come right out. I do have to use a little pokey tool to get them out, but there's the texture you can achieve with the fun foam. I did the same thing with a bunch of my scrap paper. I didn't need too many. Here are the flowers I cut. For my final card, I opted to not use the yellow flowers, just a personal choice. I am using some of the tonic crystal drops for the center of my flowers, and it really creates a nice little dome in the center of your flower. I always try to give it a little squirt off to the side first in case there's a bubble, and sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't, but it's pretty forgiving, I must say. Once my flower centers were done, I set them aside and I allowed them to dry overnight. For the backer on my wreath, I cut a piece of lawn fawn cilantro at 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and I'm going to attach it to the back of my wreath panel with some tape runner. I'm just giving it a little relief around the sides, and that creates some pretty green leaves. Here I've arranged my large flowers, and now I'm auditioning the smaller flowers around to see which ones I would like put where. I change my mind often, and I would rather change my mind before I attach everything with glue. To attach the large flowers, I'm using some small, thin dimensionals, and once they are attached to my card front, I'm using a little bit of liquid glue on the back of each of the flowers. The liquid glue allows me to move them around just a bit before they are attached permanently, and that is something I like. Once I had my flowers attached, it was time to move on to the sentiment. I positioned my stamp in my mini MISTI, cut a strip of cardstock, and I am using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I find VersaFine works extremely well when you have any type of lettering or image that has a lot of fine lines. I placed my sentiment on my card front to see how it would look and felt the whole thing just kind of melted into the background. So using the same cilantro, I cut a panel slightly larger than my sentiment strip, put the same little angle at the end on, and it looked much better. It just needed that little bit of contrast to help it stand out. I decided to pop my front panel up, so I'm applying some 3M foam tape to the back of my panel. Once I've applied the tape, just remove the liner, and I'm adding to my top fold A2 card base. I decided I was not going to pop my sentiment strip up, so I just added some tape runner to the back and positioned it on the front of my card. I cut 3 bow shapes using the Prim and Proper bow die, and I adhered all 3 together with some liquid glue. Liquid glue really helps you position and move the bow a little bit if you need to. It's a big help. It still dries pretty fast. Believe me, I've had to redo a few because they have stuck before I had all the edges in place. I'm adding a little bit of liquid glue to the back of the bow and just placing it onto my wreath. To finish my card, I'm using my favorite moonstones. They are semi-transparent, and I just attach them with a little bit of liquid glue. And for the one by the bow there, I did trim the end off so it looks like it's coming out from under the bow. It trims easily. These moonstones have a semi-cup side and a flat side. I like using the flat side up. Don't know, just my preference, I guess. To finish it, I put one last moonstone in the center of my bow. I hope you have enjoyed my tutorial today on putting together a real pretty spring wreath. This could also be used as an Easter card, wedding, anything you like. Poppystamps is in the middle of a blog blitz, so if you leave a comment below, you could win the stitched wreath I used in today's project. Thanks for stopping by, and come back soon.